Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. You know, I got a big event that I'm doing really as soon as I get out of this place. I'm going to run down the road. I'm going to head over to the Reliant Park over there, the Reliant area, and be a part of this Franchise Expo South. I'd like you to join me. I'm going to be covering it. I'm going to be doing lots of interviews, and you can come and be a part of that whole experience. And would love to get your story as to why you're going and what you're planning on learning while you're there at this event. I'd like you to join me and get your free tickets. Go over there to usdailyreview.com. That's usdailyreview.com. Click the business section, and you'll see right there, you'll see a link there, and you can get your free tickets. Get your free tickets to this event. You know, this on our friends over there at usdailyreview.com. One of my favorite things is creativity. Love to talk about it. Love to talk about people who are thought leaders in this area. And we have one here today who may be even somewhat of a contrarian, David Burkus. He wants to talk a little bit about the myths of creativity and is the author of such a book. David, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your story. Give us your background.
Yeah, so I teach in management at a business school up in Tulsa, not too far away in the grand scheme of things from where you're all at. And I started out as a leadership scholar and really wanting to look into what is it about the leaders of these great creative companies. What are they doing differently? What do they have that might be different from leaders of supposedly non-creative companies? And when I really dug into the research, I was surprised to find that as far as raw ability and raw talent, they don't have all that much different. Their companies don't have all that much different talent than others. The difference is the stories they tell themselves about their own creative abilities, and that's really where this idea of the myths of creativity came from. Stories, the things that we tell ourselves are true, whether they're actually true in reality or not. And sometimes we tell ourselves these myths about how we can or can't be creative, and we end up believing them. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I really feel like we need innovation now more than ever, and so we really got to start retelling these stories the right way.
I don't even know where to begin. It's a fascinating premise. I tell you what came to mind is the old Solomon proverb: "As a man thinketh, so is he."
Yeah, exactly.
I thought of that. Go ahead.
I said exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So if you think you're creative, you probably are.
Well, I mean, everybody really is. That's what's interesting. You know, I have a 2-year-old son, and he's the most creative person I know. And we're looking at, I have some nephews and nieces that are in kindergarten, and you look at a kindergarten classroom, it's 25 creative people. But somehow between kindergarten and college, that room of 25 students, maybe 2 of them by college will say they're creative. And it's not like they did anything different. It's not like their genes changed. They just got out of practice.
Well, I sure hope they change their genes because they would look ridiculous. No, anyway, so talk about, so I'll tell you what else came to mind is Steve Jobs. Because Steve Jobs is, really big on, in fact, one of his last interviews, I think it was, where he talked about how people continuously underestimate the power of their potential. And they were put on here to do major, even disruptive things like he did. But unfortunately, most people choose not to do that. Talk a little bit about that. Does that validate your thesis?
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, Jobs has become one of those sort of mythological figures in the creativity and the innovation space where we look at him and go, oh, what he has, nobody would have. But there's some early interviews of him in the 1990s talking about how creativity is really just connecting things. It's about connecting dots that other people don't see, and then the ones that win are the ones that connect the dots and bring them to market quickest, which is how he won. But, anybody can do that first part, and a lot of us already sort of do it. I mean, every time you ever watch a TV commercial and you go, oh, I had that idea, that's proof that you have the same raw material he did. He just knew how to act on it. And that's a really insignificant difference when you think about it. It's not like he had anything in his genes that made him more creative. He was just had a bias for action, and so he acted on all of his ideas quicker.
A bias for action, that's right. And he obviously had a healthy attitude when it comes to risk, because risk is a huge factor.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think he also saw that people, especially in the United States, are pretty quick to forget failures, and yet failures are especially in creativity, are the way that you learn, right? You have to try lots of little things, see what works, and if it fails, you still learn, right? It's actually win or learn, not win or lose, right?
Right.
And so he saw that. He took a lot of risks. That we don't talk about next computer nearly as often as we talk about how much the iPhone changed the world, right? But he knew that he was going to have to take some risks, learn from it, and then he would eventually win big in the end.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's no doubt about it. What's the name of the book? He who makes the most mistakes wins. And that's really been the philosophy of some of the best coaches in sports. Whoever makes the most mistakes in that court is going to probably be the winner because they're not uptight about perfection. They're uptight about making sure we get things done.
Yeah, and even more so, the ones that make the mistakes during practice are going to be even better because then there's an opportunity to correct them too.
That's true. So, David, the book, The Myths of Creativity, what was your objective in writing that? When I think about, in my case, I read tons of articles because I have to be ridiculously current, to be able to do this program. And so I don't get to spend as much time with books, but I do read books in my car, audio books. And, but I tell you, there's got to be, to me, a real payback. So this can't just be an interesting academic work.
Yeah, and I think, my goal is to make it far more than an academic work. My goal is to pair it with a lot of stories on the truth about creativity, right? And that draws from the psychological research, the neuroscience research of how it happens. But we see, like we talked about with Steve Jobs, we see examples of it all the time. My real goal is there's a lot of books on creativity, on innovation out there, and a lot of them are prescriptive. And they say, here's a couple techniques for generating great ideas, or here's how to get your idea accepted in the marketplace, et cetera. And that's all great. But unless we take a step back and we look at the stories people are telling themselves that are discounting their own creative abilities, those people will never pick up those kind of books. And so I see this as the first step we need to take. Before we talk about how to improve your creative practice, we really need to retell the stories to the people who have used these myths as an excuse to get out of creativity in general. I think every single business owner out there wants their people to be more creative, to bring new ideas. And it starts with retelling them stories about how creative they actually are.
Yeah, by the way, I'm looking at your website, davidburkus.com. That's Burkus, davidburkus.com, and see that you've spoken at a TEDx event. Is that at University of Oklahoma?
Yes, yeah, TEDxOU. I'm an OU alum, so apologies to everybody who might be listening. I'm still boomer.
Yeah. But about half of my audience just changed the channel. Thanks so much for mentioning that. But anyway,
sorry about that.
Anyway, we're going to have to get you back on. My producer's already doing that wrap it up signal that he gives me, and it's really offensive, by the way. And but we're going to have to get you back on. I love what you have, though, what you said there at the TEDxOU, why great ideas get rejected. I tell you right now, the reason why is because there's so much invested in old ideas. Isn't that right?
Oh, absolutely. We're way too invested in the status quo, and we need to break out of that if we're ever going to push forward and solve the wicked problems we have.
David Burkus, Burkus.com. I encourage you to check out his website, look at his book, Myths of Creativity. We'll get you back on again in the future. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. When we come back, much more for you. I do want to remind you again, you can check me out at this great franchise expo this week, starting today. Learn more about it at the business section of USDailyReview.com. And you're listening to The Price of Business.